Okay, now the next form that we're going to take a look at is here. It's the Buyer Designated Brokerage Agreement. So this is the contract between yourself and the brokerage, and appointment of the designated agent would be me, Jessica Plamondon, and all members of the Pike Group. So I'm going to take a moment to review this form in detail with you because it's not a very sexy form, but at the same time it's necessary before we get into an agreement of purchase and sale. So it's always good to take our time and get these out of the way before we enter into an agreement of purchase and sale when emotions are high and I know you just want to get to the paperwork. So let's take a moment to review. So I'll need a picture of your driver's license so that I can get the correct spelling of your name, your current address, your phone number, and your best contact email. So the buyer and the brokerage agree that the brokerage will assist the buyer to purchase a property within a geographic area as described. Usually HRM, but maybe it's South Shore, maybe it's the Valley. Now, clause 1 is appointment of the designated agent, Jessica Plamondon, and the Pike Group. So I've checked off C addendum, and that's in the addendum it names all members of the Pike Group. So that is Sandra Pike, Diane Harrison Slack, Shane Anderson, Evan Carroll, and myself, Jessica Plamondon. We also have an inside salesperson, Barb Kyle, who calls all of our seller clients. And then we have a full-time admin Lisa House, who you'll be in contact with possibly as we work our way through the transaction. Now, clause 2 is the brokerage's obligations. We kind of touched on this with the working with the real estate industry. I like to explain it as I work for the client. I hold my license at Royal LePage Atlantic. The brokerage is responsible for making sure that all the paperwork is compliant and follows the Real Estate Trading Act in Nova Scotia. But they're more like Switzerland. In the event that you find a property that is represented or being sold by another Royal LePage Atlantic realtor, it's important that you know that I work for you and that agent works for that seller. The brokerage is like Switzerland. They're neutral. They just make sure that the deals are compliant, okay? Clause 3, effective dates. We usually take our contracts for 6 months. That's just so that we don't have to edit the dates. But at the end of the day, it's mutually agreed to that we work together for a set amount of time. Now, the designated agent's obligations, we touched through this quickly through the working with the real estate industry. And I like to summarize this as I'm part of the team. I can only do my job if we have open and direct communication and if it's timely. But I work for you. I don't work for the seller. I work for you, the buyer. Okay. So I only work in your best interest. I represent I work in your best interest at all times, and I work in your best interest at all times. Exercise reasonable care and skill in performance of this agreement. My personal favorite is to obey all lawful instructions of the buyer, okay? I cannot terminate a transaction unless you tell me to. I cannot firm on a transaction unless you tell me to. So it's really important that we have open and direct communication as quickly as possible. So I get your initials on this page here. Now, the buyer's obligations are that you're not currently working with another realtor, and again, that we just have great communication. It's a very intense, process trying to find a home, and it's very exciting. There's a lot of emotions, and again, I can only do my job to the best of my abilities if we're a team. Okay. Now, what's in it for me? So the brokerage's remuneration is 2.5% plus HST. It's important that you know where my fees are paid. So I'm only paid at the end of a successful transaction. So once the deal closes, the lawyers separate all the funds and I am only paid at that point. So Royal LePage Atlantic takes 2.5% and from there they pay me, and from there I pay the admin and I pay for all the the costs up to that point. Okay, but that's only after a successful close. We could work together for 6 months, and if you do not close on a property, then you don't owe me anything, okay? It's important that you know that you are entitled to equal representation as the seller in Nova Scotia. That's why we have that. So on to clause 7, which is use and distribution of your information. I share your information with all members of the Pike Group, my broker, and the law if I'm required, basically. Clause 8, change in representative capacity of the designated agent. If I were to lose my real estate license for some reason, then a member of the Pike Group would step in and facilitate your, I just got sad there. But a member of the Pike Group would step in and facilitate the transaction on your behalf. If the Pike Group was no longer available, then the brokerage would step in and assign a realtor to facilitate your transaction. So your deal would still close in perpetuity, okay? Then termination of this agreement, my personal favorite is 9(1)(c), on a completed purchase of a property prior to the expiry of the term of this agreement. I always like to say here, if you end up finding a house that is a for sale by owner and they absolutely refuse to pay my commissions, then that's a conversation we'll have at that time. But usually, if you end up finding a property and the seller just refuses to pay my fees, then that's a fine. We just break up, we end the contract. And, I've never had that happen, to be honest with you, but it could. So just like to put that out there, it could. More often than not, I've actually had customers pay my fees at the end of the day because they're so happy with the services they've received. So that's it. That's all. Oh, sorry. Clause 10 is continuing duties. So I keep your confidentiality in perpetuity. So I don't share your information with anybody unless I'm requested by the law. So that's Clause 10. Clause 11, miscellaneous provisions. That's kind of legal mumbo jumbo, but the brokerage and the designated agent have advised the buyer to seek financing pre-approval. That is very important. And in fact, in this market, it's important to be as upfront with our financing as possible because some sellers don't even want you in their home without a letter of pre-approval. This agreement will be governed by the laws of the province of Nova Scotia, and the buyer, the brokerage, and the designated agent shall submit to the jurisdiction of the courts of the province of Nova Scotia for the resolution of any disputes that may arise out of this agreement. No amendment to the terms of this agreement shall be effective unless it is in writing. That is very important. So all communications, whether we have them on the phone, we really should be backing them up with text messages or emails, ideally in the contracts themselves. If there's a conflict or discrepancy between any provision added to this agreement or any provision in the standard preset portion hereof, the added provision will supersede the standard preset provision to the extent. Okay, so if we add additional clauses, they are part of the contract as well. This agreement will read with all changes of number and gender required by the context. See, legal mumbo jumbo. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'll have the buyer sign here, and then I will also sign here. And of course, we will use our our digital platform. Currently, we are working with .loop, and if you have any questions or concerns about that, please let me know. Talk soon.